All right. How's everybody doing? Good. I don't have video right now. I'm going to try to get that back. There were some issues with Zoom, and we just had some technical difficulties with a duplicate link. So I think we should be good. So we've got Doug Dixon with RECA as well, and Kristian. So they're just going to talk today about stuff that they have posted about the pandemic, how things are going, and there's been a lot of questions they've been getting from realtors. So they're going to address those. And then we can ask them questions when we're done. So anything you want to ask them, it doesn't have to be about the pandemic, but it's just really good to engage the governing body so that we can keep up to date and just keep connected. So Kristian and Doug, whoever wants to start, I'll let you go.
Thanks. Thank you, Ryan, for that introduction. And good morning to everyone. So like Ryan said, my name is Kristian, and I'm here with Doug Dixon. He's the Senior Practice Advisor at RECA. We're here to help with any questions you guys have. So the intent of this meeting this morning was to provide you with additional information on COVID-19 from a regulatory standpoint. And as you can imagine, it's an unprecedented time, and there's a lot of adjustments that are being made and will continue to be made in the weeks that are coming. So some of the information that I provide you today might not necessarily be up to date a few weeks from now, depending on how everything unfolds. There's no formal agenda for this meeting. All we're going to be doing is essentially, I'll go over some of the basic things that we provided on our website that's currently available. And then I'll go over also some of the questions that I've been getting from brokers. And then from there, we'll open it up to specific questions that you might have. Now I have a chat here. Let me see if, oh, closer to the mic. Sorry about that. I'll move the mic a little closer here. Is that better?
Oh, way better.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, mic was a little bit too far. All right, so let me see if I can share my screen so I can go to the website on our the RECA website here. Just one second. Share screen. Where is it? There we go. So I don't know if you guys can see the screen that we have here. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, it shows.
No. Okay, perfect. So essentially, for the people that are in the meeting, if you wanted to find this link, you would go to the RECA website. You would go under Professional and Learners, and then you would go to Guides and Industry Tools under the Tools and Resources tab, and it will be the top link. So there's essentially everything that RECA has been able to accumulate in regards to COVID-19 for the past month here has been kept in one place in terms of what's available. You know, we dive into very deeply into discussions with sellers, kind of the steps that you should be taking. It has a checklist for discussions with your seller client. Very good tool to have in terms of making sure that everything you're doing with the seller is protecting you and protecting them. Let me just go back. And in addition to that, there's just a really large amount of information, a plethora of things that you can look at your own time. I don't want to, dive into something that's not really relevant to the majority of you. In terms of the major questions that I have been getting from brokers and realtors, one of the biggest ones is, what's going to be happening April 1st with rent money, and how will that impact brokerages? How will that impact tenants? How will that impact landlords? Currently, we don't have an answer to that. This is, in the realm of Silver Alberta, so we don't know exactly what's going to be happening. My understanding from what was been said in the media is that no evictions will be taking place. They actually have some information on that here on our website. I'm just finding it. Property managers, landlords. So tenants cannot be evicted for non-payment of rents until May 1st. There's also going to be no late fees that can be charged until June 30th, and they can't be charged retroactively. Landlords and landlords and tenants should work together to develop payment plans. And then again, landlords can still file applications to receive orders for possession if the reason is not related to them not being able to pay their bills as a result of COVID-19. So that, I guess, there's more news at 11 in terms of what's going to be happening. But if you're getting questions from landlords, from tenants, at this point, it wouldn't be something RECA would be able to make a determination on. The other one that is big is, our brokerage is required to operate. The government of Alberta has deemed real estate services essential, so you're not required to shut down. That being said, there is no requirement from RECA that you continue to operate if you feel that it's better from an operation standpoint to go virtual or to even shut down. Nobody can force you to continue to work. The third one that keeps coming up a lot is the hold harmless clauses that were, I guess, put forth by some of the boards in the association. RECA's stance is that you should always advise your clients to have independent legal advice on that. There's no, we can't tell you whether to include them or not. There was some questions as to the liability that could arise if they are included, but ultimately get the client to seek legal counsel. Make sure that you're not forcing them to put these clauses in there. And
I just interject here, Kristian.
Anytime, Doug. Anytime.
The concern that RECA has is the clauses that were put out dealing with the pandemic or COVID-19. Sorry. There is no one size fits all, and every situation is a bit different when it comes to sellers and buyers. So if you have a situation with just a simple seller and buyer and it's not linked to any other transactions, let's say the sellers are moving out into a rental accommodation and the buyers are leaving a rental accommodation, then it's a fairly simple, straightforward situation. But if there's linkages where, say, the seller is, once they have their house sold, they're also buying another property. As soon as you get into different scenarios, then the one size fits all clauses that they've tried to create don't apply. So RECA's best advice is, if you're putting together a transaction, that your clients seek legal advice to see what issues around COVID-19 should be incorporated into the purchase contract rather than using a boilerplate
solution. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Doug, for that. So, moving down here again, we have a lot of information on residential property managers, discussions. Definitely feel free to go here, look at everything that's included. There's a lot of pertinent information that can be helpful. Just trying to see if there's any, there's the legal clauses here. We discussed that as well. Prior to inserting any clauses with written service agreements, definitely advise them to seek legal counsel. In terms of another big thing that's coming up is RMS. Ultimately, the judgment, or I guess the decision was made that the RMS still applies in this under this circumstance. I know that some measurement companies aren't working. I also know that some are. And it's the responsibility ultimately of the industry professional to make sure that the RMS are conducted. That being said, if you're in a position where there's a tenant on the property and they're not allowing access, these circumstances can be principle one of the residential measurement standards. They allow for that. If you can't gain access to the property, then for whatever reason, whether it's a foreclosure or a tenant's not allowing access, then you can specify that, and you can use then if you have blueprints, or in a situation like that, then just simply disclose that the size does not match the RMS, or it hasn't been checked, and you should be okay. Aside from that, those are the main questions that I've been getting. I guess I want to open it up in terms of what kind of questions you guys have for us. Feel free to either type them or unmute yourself so you can join the chat, whatever is easier for you. And it doesn't have to be COVID-19 related. If you have other questions, this is a great time to open up a discussion.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the discussions that I've been having with my clients really have anything to do with RECA's rules.
Okay.
I just sort of popped in on here to see what additional information was available other than what's already posted on the site.
Okay.
I mean, most of the questions I'm getting from my clients is, you know, how are you going to market my property during these times?
Yeah.
And, you know, what more can you be doing? And it's like, well, the
Yeah.
buyer's buying, it's a little hard to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had a discussion before the meeting started with Ryan about, you know, sales projections from Krebs and how poor they are. So I feel for you in this circumstance. It's
बहुत शुक्रिया अच्छा मैं पूछ रहा हूँ कि शावर डोर ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਰਡਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ
hello.
ਠੀਕ ਮਤਲਬ ਆਰਡਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ
I think somebody's mic's probably not muted. Yeah. So any other related questions, guys? I'm sorry, you know, given the circumstances, this is essentially what we have on our website. I could dive into specifics here that are on there, but I don't want to bore you because it's already there. I'm sure you guys can go in there and go through them. The one thing that we also we're getting is there was, I guess, some confusion and we had to send a second communication was that again, brokerages are not obligated to continue operating if they don't feel that it's a safe thing to do. And there's no obligation to remain physically open. If you have the capacity to work virtually, then that is fully an option.
Kristian, we've got some, we have some questions in the chat. So the first
Sure.
one, the forms that Krebs put out, where do they fit in? These are the questionnaires about health. Is it advisable from RECA to have them sign? So it's the ones from Krebs that, if I remember right, they kind of, they're almost like the conditional sale disclosure form. That's the format that they had.
Okay, is that the whole harmless clauses that
the intention, it was similar, I think, but it's not Area's hold harmless clauses. It was Krebs.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if I can find.
Just take a, yeah.
I've got them. I just if I can grab them
I'll
here.
stop share, and then if you can put them up on there, and I'll get, I guess, Doug's opinion.
Yeah, do you want to? Yeah, so I'll find those. I just got to find them on my computer. Do you want to maybe go with the next question, and then I'll find those.
Sure,
forms?
sure, not a problem. Yeah. Oh, I see some questions here on the side. My apologies. I was sharing, so I couldn't see them. I'm representing a buyer and a seller has requested that he only wants the home inspector present. What is a legal obligation? So if you have the approval of the seller for only the home inspector to be there, then you would not be obligated to be at the property. There's a form that you can fill out. It's in the information bulletin on home inspections and your obligation to be there. And you know, the form doesn't have to be the one that's in our information bulletin. As long as you have acknowledgement from the seller that they're okay with the home inspector being there by themselves, then there would be a problem with that.
But the other issue would be if the buyer wants to be present with the home inspector, then you have to have that discussion with the seller. So there's two different situations. One is it the buyer that wants to be there with the home inspector to hear and see things that the inspector points out, or and so there'd have to be some agreement. The seller, as part of the clause for a home inspection, really wouldn't normally be able to refuse the buyer to accompany the home inspector. So there'd have to be some discussion if that issue came up. And then the other issue, as Kristian mentions, is if in fact the buyer's happy with the home inspection being done just by the home inspector without them tagging along, then use the acknowledgement form with the seller that gives approval for the home inspector to be in the house by themselves.
Perfect. Doug, the other question that came in here is, can we speak in terms of insurance? And I'm not sure if I can tackle that directly, but should agents look to carry private insurance specifically for COVID-19 issues? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what's available in insurance.
Yeah.
Craig, could you clarify?
I guess I can chime in a little bit. So some brokerages do carry, for instance, like we have a tool Pete, which covers bodily harm. So in the RECA thing that was sent out, obviously REX doesn't cover that. But there are additional insurers that do cover bodily harm. And for when this first started to come out, I had to call my broker to make sure that this is in fact covered, and found out that it was. So there are additional insurance options out there, although I'm not sure how easy it will be to get like right now, if like for a new policy.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know that all insurers would take the same stance that you, the feedback you got, in that if somebody's actually aware of this issue with the COVID-19, and they deliberately or willingly go ahead and put themselves in harm's way, whether the insurance would actually cover in those instances. So
we actually got an update from Toolpete where there's a number of exclusions, and like if you don't, it says, because there's been a recommendation to avoid open houses, for instance, if you do an open house, that's an exclusion.
Yep.
So there's a long list of exclusions that have been added.
And the question, another one that came in here with, will RECA be putting out mandatory education for this year? My understanding so far is that there won't be any additional education, but that could change. I believe the mortgage brokers, and I should clarify there, for the real estate sector, I think mortgage brokers will be getting one this year. I'm not sure, Doug, do you know anything that's different than that?
no, I believe you're correct that there wasn't going to be a continuing education program for real estate, because it was a fairly heavy couple of years in a row previously. So that the only one this year was, I believe, as you said, for mortgage brokers.
Perfect. I'm glad I was right about that.
Kristian, I'm going to share my screen here, so I'll show
Sure.
you and Doug that form that they were, the two forms that they were talking about.
Okay.
And Lana, just make sure that these are the ones that you're talking about. There we go. These are the two forms, so, or the one form.
Okay.
Have you seen these?
I believe so.
Okay.
So this would be similar to what RECA has put out as checklists for buyers and sellers.
Good question. Yeah. I personally don't see any issue with this. Like Doug said, it falls in line with the forms that we put out. It's just more of a checklist for the agent to assess the likelihood that the individual might have contracted COVID-19. It's not. I don't see it as a legally binding document, right? It's essentially a.
Well, it's a disclosure form.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's evidence that there's been a discussion and the questions
Okay.
have been asked and answered.
Okay. Okay.
So what's your perspective when it comes to these forms? So with this one from Crab and then the one from Area as well, like, would you just suggest that agents and brokerages use both?
Well, if you're talking about an area form that's a similar disclosure issues around the status of the people involved, then it probably doesn't really matter which one you use. You wouldn't have a need to do more than one. So, I mean, all the different organizations are putting something out to assist industry members. So pick what you think is most appropriate for your practice and use that. Whereas these forms are different from the ones that are part of the purchase contract.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So you have a wealth of forms to choose from with area, CREB, and RECA.
He shared as recording. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for that. Guys, feel free to engage with any other questions you might have as well. Like, don't limit it just to COVID-19. Hopefully, we can provide some clarity on other issues as well.
Does anybody have anything else for them at all? Okay, well, if you guys are good with info, I think that clarifies a lot of things. Thanks, Kristian and Doug.
And as things unfold, like I said, there might be changes that are coming up in the future. Don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to RECA generally if you have questions. Ultimately, the structure is that you should contact your broker first, and if the broker doesn't know, they can get in touch with myself or Doug. But as real estate associates, you do have access to the info services, so don't hesitate to get in touch with any questions. If they don't have an answer, they usually come to us. And yeah, we're here to help.
And actually, on that note, like, I mean, I know that a lot of agents are probably unsure about reaching out to you guys. So how does it work? Like, if there's just a general question from a broker or from an agent and they want to talk to somebody, is it confidential?
From a broker, yeah. When you're dealing with myself or Doug, it's fully confidential and no prejudice. So anything that's said remains with us. It can't be used against you in an investigation or anything like that. If you are a real estate a realtor, an associate, at that point you usually will be calling into info services, and those calls are recorded.
Okay.
But,
sorry.
I don't know if that clarifies the issue. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I just want, just making sure that, if people want info, they feel safe when they're doing so, right?
For sure.
Well, if it's a general practice question that an associate has, they, calling info services, they'll help them out. And if they aren't able to provide the answer, then they would contact either Kristian or I. If it's something of a more awkward nature, let's say it has to do with an investigation or a situation that's really gone badly on a transaction, then the associate is best discussing it with their broker, and the broker coming to Kristian or I and asking questions, because as Kristian said, it's confidential and without prejudice. So the broker can have a very direct and blunt conversation with us, and we can give advice. We can give options as to how you might, if there are options, to how to deal with a particular situation, and it doesn't go any further. But if an associate was to call on, say, a really messy situation in the transaction,